the Around the NFL podcast. Has too many red flags to be a first-round pick.
From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL 2023 NFL Draft Round 1 edition. I'm Dan Hanzus. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. Woo-wee! It is coming up on 10 o'clock Pacific time as we record this. Just finished a nearly 4-hour live stream. Shot up to the Chris Wessling podcast studio, boys. And now we're going to go through it all. Round 1 and all the excitement and surprises in there. During the picks, the 31 picks.
We're a little
nailed it.
We're a little loopy potentially, but would say
that's what I was looking for.
They're in. We've never put out anywhere close to this amount of content on day one of the draft, and I had a great time with you guys.
It was a lot of fun. People can still, if you're a true diehard, and if you're listening to this, you may or may not be. It's up on our YouTube channel, the Around the NFL podcast YouTube channel. It'll be there forever, so you can see us lose our minds in the heat, and you can see us react as history was being made. Anthony Richardson going to the Seahawks, but more importantly, us doing a live stream together and Jessica being featured prominently.
Yeah, well, anytime you could do a live stream where you have Jessica featured prominently, you have a huge personal announcement, which go check out the stream. I won't even tell you.
We got a lot of football. We got a lot to talk about.
What it was.
Right.
And during that stream, you could turn the temperature up in the room to about 120 degrees and watch us melt in real time. I mean, that alone.
Who said this podcast doesn't have sex appeal?
Exactly. So check out the stream. We were happy. It was an experiment that we're happy with, and now we turn our attention to round 1. And it was the big storylines, boys. Bryce Young, not a big story, although it is the big pick, number 1 overall. The number 2 pick, and we have sandwich props. We'll get to that on Saturday. But all the talk about the Houston Texans moving out of that spot, maybe not taking a quarterback. Why don't we start there? Let's start with some quarterback talk, going right through what the Colts then did at 4. But let's start, Marc, with C.J. Stroud going to the Texans at 2. How surprised were you that happened?
I was, because I felt like there was this sort of critical mass impact of like the Texans are going to go somewhere else with that number 2 pick. And there wasn't a lot linking them to C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, I think, took a lot of damaging PR over the last couple of weeks, and he
for what too? Stupid. Now when you look back at
it, I think it's different compared to what teams maybe think about these players. But for all of us, it was this S2 test and everything else about him. The Texans instead went and got their quarterback, and I mean, just watching C.J. Stroud's tape, I love the way he throws the football. I think it changes everything for the Texans, who, had they gone down the road with Davis Mills as their quarterback next season, it's like you didn't complete the test.
Like, good job by Jeremiah sticking with Stroud on his mock, and I think he even had the trade for Anderson right, which is crazy, because it made too much sense. And that's what when I say for what, I mean all this honking for what. Mm-hmm. I give the Texans credit. I think what happened was there was a draft information vacuum. And people just started filling in the vacuum of things that they were hearing, and it was all probably nonsense. And it's interesting, and I do think we should talk Young a little bit, because we haven't talked specifically that combination. But you're right, the draft felt like it started at 2, and it's interesting to think of all that S2 talk, Dan, because the offense that the Texans are going to run, Bobby Slowick, who they brought over from San Francisco. The one thing that Kyle Shanahan wants more than anything is just processing. It's why he always wants these guys like Kirk Cousins and Brock Purdy that are kind of just like, I can answer the test 1 to 2 to 3. So what if I don't make like huge game-breaking plays and improvise on my own? And the S2 test, in theory, was supposed to be testing processing. So they didn't care about that. They cared about the tape. And what they saw on tape was a guy who was extremely accurate, who takes coaching really well. And maybe he's not as exciting athletically as Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson, but he feels like a quarterback where his floor, or where I see him as, is like a Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins type of quarterback at worst. And I think he's a even more talented thrower, and he has a higher upside. So it's just interesting. They didn't care about the S2 test whatsoever. That's the quarterback they chose.
They didn't care, but like Brock Purdy, for instance, like led everyone in the S2 test a year ago, and we saw what happened to him on the field. It is a case study to me, though, and I know these late season meaningless games, that win over the Colts allowed Carolina after their trade to go decide which quarterback they wanted, and the Texans they took C.J. Stroud, but would they have at number one? I don't think so.
But who knows?
We don't know.
C.J. Stroud could turn into a superstar, and
be
Bryce Young can't play or can't stay in the field. So it's so early, and just like the Panthers are saying, we don't care about the S2 test. Well, if he's a terrible pro and part of the problem is the mental game is what he struggles with, then we'll see.
Yeah.
So right now, this is why the draft is so fun and such a great fan event, is because it's hope season, it's optimism, it's the idea that all these guys are going to hit. And you know, I have to say, like, when you see going back to Bryce Young as the number one overall pick, and the same thing happened with the Jets when Bryce Young, when the trade goes down weeks ago. And it's like, oh, man, the Panthers got fleeced. I can't believe they gave up so much. Well, what do you think about the trade now? When you see this team as excited as it is, as this guy comes out on the stage and hugs Rog and they hold up the jersey, and you know the Panthers feel like they are now moving forward again. Same thing with Rodgers and the Jets. Did the Jets give up too much? Well, go check out that building and the energy at Florham Park as Rodgers was introduced. It doesn't hurt as much. So I really do. I think that both of these teams are loving the fresh start. In a different world, should the Texans be drafting number one? Sure, but I think they have to process that if they haven't already. I think they probably have. Us as football fans, we haven't maybe because it was so wild how that played out.
Well, even weeks ago, they were desperately trying to draft Bryce Young. So that is why you can at least question the process. In the end, it might work out better that they have Stroud, and we'll get to Will Anderson. But the reporting that came out on Thursday from Jay Glazer specifically about how close the Texans were to making that deal happen, and they got a little indecisive at the end, that initially Carolina thought that they were going to trade up with Chicago at 2. Chicago thought they were going to trade down from 1 to 2. Presumably, the Texans were ready to take Bryce Young, and then Carolina was going to move up from 9 to 2. Who knows who they would have taken at 2? We've heard some scuttlebutt. It would have been Anthony Richardson, actually, at 2. But Texans get a little indecisive, and they must have at some point decided it's okay. We love Stroud this much anyways, and maybe we can now use some of the picks that we didn't end up making in that trade, the number 12 pick, use that as a resource to get all the way back up to number 3, and we'll see which works out. But it's just a reminder not to trust all these draft reports coming up into
Young turns into a super-duper star. Yes, it hurt giving up DJ Moore, but if that's what ended up getting them over the hump to get that pick and make this happen, it will be looked at as one of the great decisions in franchise history.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf scenario. It's just that I just think if you first of all, the Texans to turn around and get Will Anderson the way they did at number 3 makes the night extremely successful, because that's who I thought they were going to go get, and then be without a quarterback or have to get one down at 12. They were very savvy in the way they pulled off this night, and it's kind of a rarity. I mean, I don't think of the Texans that way, and haven't for the past couple of years, because they've been lost in their own wilderness.
They've been
this
not
is a
even
game changer.
A competitive organization for 2 years, and now they have something where it's like, look, they think they're going to compete this year. I think they should. And Will Anderson was a great pick. I do, just before we wrap on Young, because we haven't hit it too much, I think he's entering a better situation than most number 1 picks. Partly because they weren't that bad a team last year. They have a really good defense, I think, and they have a good coach in Frank Reich, who I think is perfect for a young quarterback, and they have a good offensive line. They don't have great weapons around them, and that's like the next thing, and they'll, I'm sure, add in the draft, and they had to give up some picks. So it's not perfect, but compared to most number 1 overall picks, like, I think he's entering a nice situation, and our favorite Panthers fan in the building, David Ely, did release a statement upon this draft pick. Quote,
for people that don't know David Ely, remember,
yes,
David Ely was the number 1 Cam stan. He's a guy that he grew up in North Carolina. He famously had a bottle of champagne that he was going to drink with his, I believe, his then girlfriend after a Super Bowl 50 win over the Broncos. It's close enough to the story, Marc.
Well, I mean, yeah.
He brought it to work. Yeah.
He ended up drinking the bottle alone in a hot tub. The girlfriend was out of the picture as well by that point.
I think she had been out of the picture for about half a decade. I mean, I don't think that
But he was still thinking about it.
Sure.
Yeah,
like mentally,
lot.
she was still in the picture.
Anyway, the statement from Dave.
Quote, "We love our short king QB. Keep pounding." And so
that's smart.
Short and simple. David, like myself, not a large man. And yeah, we're looking to Bryce Young to really represent the short guys out there, although he's really not that short. I mean, he's 5'10" and a half. For NFL players, he's short.
And we had David Carr on our live stream, and I asked him about like the Bryce Young height situation, just another quarterback, what he would think, and he thought it came out really strongly, saying in today's NFL, not concerned about it. That there's some misconceptions about what it would actually hold him back from doing.
I hear that a lot, and it's all good. Stay positive. 5'10", 204 is his listed weight. He's got to be able to take a pounding.
He's really like 190.
Yeah.
That's the bigger concern. But he did take a pounding last year. It's a fair point to make that he got hit a lot in the SEC, and he was okay.
So keep pounding. Ha.
Yeah, it's well done, Grave Digger.
One.
I didn't hear anything actually.
Oh no.
Now you have to do it and do the bit again, and that's gonna hurt.
Keep pounding.
There we go.
Magical.
Wow, we got the same crew here for the show.
Everyone's a little loopy.
Everyone's doing double duty back there. Kendall's here, Eric's here. It's all happening.
We've all lost roughly individually 6 to 7 pounds each because it was roughly the duplicate temperatures of Iraq in the studio that we were just doing.
It was a live stream, but also a fat farm, and it was really enjoyable to shake some of the weight.
Can I just read the terms that they gave up for Will Anderson, because it is worth noting that they traded a first-round pick next year. Now I lost it here. A first and a third next year. So they gave up an incredible amount. They gave up the 12th pick, so they gave up the 33rd pick. The Cardinals ended up moving back up from the 12, and then a first and a third rounder in 2024. So they really gave up a quarterback type of haul. Like, even though it was from 12 to 3 and they didn't take a quarterback, they basically paid for a quarterback. They paid a lot for Will Anderson. It's just worth pointing out. A first and a third next year.
But they got, I think in another world, you get one guy to build around. I know they had that 12th pick too, but in theory it was going to be quarterback or Will Anderson. They got both, and you kind of did 2 years draft work in one if they both work out.
The Texans' defense was not good last year, at least statistically. 27th in points allowed, 30th in total defense, one of the worst run defenses ever statistically, allowed the 6th most rushing yards for a single season. So this is an area of need.
Anderson, great.
Here he comes.
Great run stopper, very tough. I'm glad he ended up going ahead of Tyree Wilson, although I did lose sandwiches on that, so I'm not that glad. But he just made more sense as a guy that was outrageously productive, and it would have been maybe outsmarting yourself to take someone else ahead of him. And so he's also the type of guy, it kind of reminds me of when the Raiders took Cleveland Farrell, and that was a terrible pick, and people were like, what is happening? But the whole thing was like, well, this is a guy who the way he is as a human, like that's who we want to represent us. And that was Mayock's first pick. Mm-hmm. Whereas now it's the DeMeco Ryans era. Everyone says this about Will Anderson, that he's like the best leader if you want to be one type of person. But, oh, by the way, he's also like the most productive pass rusher of the last 5 years.
Just as a side note, an asterisk here, this also essentially sealed my mock draft victory over our producer.
Oh, snap! Grave digger in the grave. I mean,
it's not I'm not trying to sling an arrow at you.
His body's
on him.
Not trying to drop a bomb on you, but it was
Justin's body
strange
is
turn of
still
events.
like kind of moving. He's got some like post-mortem, like rigor mortis happening.
Yeah.
And you're just throwing the dirt on him. So it's over, baby. It wasn't a thing of beauty. I think you got 6 picks right and he got 5. Is that correct?
Something like that. Or we both got 5, but he nailed the correct spot.
Yes. We had a scoring
system.
Except
at about 20 minutes into it, it looked like we were both totally on fire. And then it went about as cold case as possible.
The final score was 13-12. And I believe it was 13-12 at about pick 15 or 16, and then it just held. It turned
14.
into a real.
Broderick Jones was the last correct pick.
It turned into a real defensive struggle down the stretch. But Marc, congratulations on getting back your mock crown.
Thank you, and we'll have a decisive third match next year, barring what up, biatch? Earth-based disaster.
Let's move to the fourth pick, and let's stick with a big. I was kind of relieved, I got to be honest with you, about Anthony Richardson coming off the board early because you know how it is. And Gregg, that you were among the chorus, but it's not a personal slight. Certain players, like football Twitter, get so excited that I could feel like the anger if Anthony Richardson would have slid. People would have been furious because so many people had fallen in love with Richardson during this process. So when he went to the Colts at 4, I was like, okay, I don't have to deal with those takes.
It was a surprise. At least, it was to me. I really thought he wasn't going to get past 5 with Seattle, maybe not 6 with Detroit. And there was some whispers that was the case. There was a strong feeling he was going to go high, but maybe it was the Colts all along. I give them credit for not giving that away in any way. A couple hours before the draft, Will Levis, who did not get drafted on Thursday, will have to wait till Friday.
Rough. He was in the room too, the draft room.
Biggest surprise I would say of the night overall was minus 400 in betting parlance. He was 4 times more likely to go number 4 overall than not. And yet, he didn't even get taken in the first round. So, for some reason, he was this heavy favorite to go there. There was all this chatter all along that it was Levis and Colts, Levis and Colts, and Levis and Colts. And this might have been a smokescreen that was intentional from the Colts to try to prevent anyone from trading ahead of them where Arizona was at 3 and maybe taking Richardson. Because apparently Richardson was their guy all along, and I think it's a great fit with Shane Steichen and after what he did with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I just think about where we were with Jalen Hurts a couple years ago, and now he's MVP level talent and the face of the Eagles franchise. It's like I kind of love the coach-player match with Steichen to develop some of this with Anthony Richardson. Limited college experience. I love what Bucky Brooks said, that this is basically sort of like an NBA draft pick where you're not necessarily taking the most polished example from a college player. You're taking potential traits, and he brings all of that, and he feels like the future of the position to me. And I think it's an incredibly exciting pick for a Colts team that has really flatlined with boring, awful, unwatchable quarterback play for years on end.
Let me go through it since Andrew Luck's surprise retirement in 2019. Jake Brisket, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. So obviously this is a big turn now that for the first time they are investing in a young quarterback coming out of college.
It's crazy. Throw Foles in there. That is like the least athletic group of quarterbacks you could come up with
since Luck. And so Richardson is a total swing in the other direction. And we talked about it leading in. There are some concerns about whether he's polished enough to attack the game in a successful manner with a short game, but listen, we'll see. I think we all graded it in real time on the stream as a great move. And if he does develop the way they hope, there's a good chance this is one of those things like, oh, he went 4th, but he was the best player in the draft.
Yeah, and it's an immediate headache to defensive coordinators. It's like there aren't a lot of comps of a quarterback like this, and how teams are going to have to stop him. And it's like you talk about this like he's going to take so long to develop. He's going to start right away.
Well, he only started 13 games at Florida.
Right. And so you can look at that 2 ways. Like he's inexperienced, no doubt. But I think there's a way to look at that and think like he actually kind of needs to play, and I think playing will help him. He was a redshirt sophomore, and so he's a couple years younger than like Will Levis, for instance. And I think he's got to learn by playing, and when you have that running ability, that gives you like a baseline where I think you can have an offense that's capable enough as he gets better.
I like that, and Shane Steichen, of course, helped turn Jalen Hurts into a superstar in Philly, and yet I've seen it happen. Zach Wilson. Sometimes a raw prospect gets thrown out on the field, and then when it's not going well, you're like, oh, man, they maybe should have given this kid a little time to learn this on the sidelines. Or he's 20 years old. He started 13 games, and he had a completion percentage south of 55% in college. So is he going to be able to be starting against NFL
20?
defenses in September?
Right.
If he can, he is an exciting player, no doubt. But it's a big ask for a kid that has not a lot of experience.
You know what, though? Like the same way you talked about Rodgers and Bryce Young, it's like when we pick our games for week 1, like I'm zooming towards the Colts if I have the chance, because it's like they're a must-watch team, and they have not felt that way about them for a long time. And it was a bold move, and I love that.
Right. He's got a couple receivers, Pearson Pittman. He's got a good offensive coach. Jim Bob Cooter's back in the building. The offensive line is okay. It's not good, but it's not terrible. Him and Minshew. You have Minshew there if you really don't want to start him right away, but it's the pocket presence for me. I mean, we'll talk about it plenty in the coming days, but I love it, and I love that it kept me from feeling mixed things about Seattle and Anthony Richardson, because I really think they would have taken him, and I think it would have been a smart move, because I do think you can compare him to two guys, Cam Newton and Josh Allen. We'll see if he gets there. I think he has better pocket presence than either one of them. He certainly has a lot to learn, though, too.
You actually said on the live stream that if they picked Will Levis in that spot,
the Seahawks,
which seems insane now because he didn't even end up going in the first round, you were never going to support the Seahawks ever again.
I was going to renounce my Seahawks fandom if they took Levis.
That would have shaken the building in Seattle.
Richardson felt okay. If it was going to be Levis and you're ruining my Geno time, I would be unhappy. Instead, they just improved the team around.
Every time they, we're going to get to that. Every time they cut to Levis in the green room, Gregg did the Nelson from The Simpsons laugh.
That's not true.
I was like, bro, he's a human. He's a kid.
What did I say on our preview show? I said I think Levis is a good prospect. He's kind of like an early second round type of has a chance to be a pretty good starter prospect. That was it.
You said he was like Ryan Tannehill.
I said he was like a Ryan Tannehill type of guy.
He's had
he did do that laugh, though, Dan. He did do that laugh.
He did the laugh.
Yeah, I know.
Multiple
every
times.
time we cut to him.
It's two people that said it happened.
It's not true.
The Seattle Seahawks, they had that pick from Denver. They took
not true.
They took Devin Witherspoon, cornerback out of Illinois. I'm going to do 3 here, and then we can just talk it over, and then we're going to take a break and keep rolling. The Arizona Cardinals from Detroit via the Rams. Gets a little complicated sometimes with the drafting or the trading. Paris Johnson Jr., the first tackle, comes off the board to the Cardinals, and then the Raiders, a team that needs defensive help, take Tyree Wilson, defensive end out of Texas Tech. Go ahead, boys. Have at it.
I love Tyree Wilson to the Raiders. I mean, to pair him with Max Crosby, if he works out, you've got a genuine tornado there on the front of your defense.
Genuine tornado.
I mean, and part of the reason is that they know Chandler Jones is not long for Las Vegas. If it wasn't for the guaranteed money in his contract, he probably wouldn't be on the team this year. He'll be there for one more year. So I think you have Jones, Tyree Wilson. To me, Tyree Wilson is maybe the biggest boomer bust pick of the draft. Paris Johnson might be the other one, and, just because they were both taken so high. They're both traits guys. Those two positions get pushed up in the draft. We've seen a lot of edge players and tackles get overdrafted, and I know that's like the analytical thinking. Take edge players, take tackles, but you also have to get it right. And I know you don't want to go for singles and doubles, but these two guys, Johnson and Wilson especially, feel like they're going for home runs, whereas Seattle went with a guy in Devin Witherspoon who felt like the clear best cornerback in this draft, very physical, just kind of the classic, got that dog in him. A little surprising Seattle took him because they haven't taken cornerbacks that high. But you figure Pete Carroll will know what to do with him, and I think a player that Seahawks fans are really
they hit on Tariq Woolen in the draft last year as a late-round pick, and now they go and make a lottery selection. That's a great cornerback tandem, if who knows.
Physical. That is a physical duo.
If Jamal Adams
there
can come back healthy, as another physical player in their secondary, and I'm not saying it's Legion of Boom, but it could be a really good back end. And I'll always wonder with the Seattle Seahawks here if – and it kind of speaks to Geno. We talked about in the old days, the Geno coaster and how he would just be up and down, up and down. That's been a great – I guess down is good for a roller coaster, so it's kind of a confusing thing. But Geno, it's just been a long down, celebration, arms up, even here, because who knows –
He had a great day.
Seattle's GM, if Schneider and Carroll had Richardson available – do they take him, and how does that change the trajectory? Instead, they take defense, and then we'll get to it later. They go get help for Geno. So Geno's one of the big winners. As we talk about winners and losers.
If you have Anthony Richardson behind Geno, the problem is that about 14 minutes into Week 1, Seahawks fans are going to be wondering and clamoring for the concept of seeing Anthony Richardson replace any ups or downs that
Right, 'cause
Geno had.
Geno really signed what amounted to a 1-year contract. Very similar to what Derek Carr signed a year ago. A little different in terms of money, but very similar in terms of structure, where it's like 1 year, if it goes well, it'll keep going. If it doesn't go well, we'll take a little bit of pain and we'll say goodbye. I don't think that's going to happen, especially after this night. Yeah, we'll get to it, I guess. But I'm ready to crown the Seahawks 2023 NFC West champions. Let's go.
All right.
Dan, are you enthused about another campaign, Geno-filled campaign, along with our friend Gregg here?
I mean, it's the Geno thing is kind of whatever for me, but the Seahawks fandom, it seems like it's going to be coming on stronger than ever.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Just seems like a lot. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll keep rolling. All right, we're back. All right, we're 7 picks in. Let's keep rolling here. So the first running back is off the board. In fact, why don't we bookend this? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm not even going to get to the middle, but I just want to say at number 8 overall, the Atlanta Falcons take Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas, and then the Detroit Lions from the Arizona Cardinals via Houston through Cleveland. That's how that.
That's a journey.
That's a lot. They take Jamar Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama. So we have 2 running backs that come off the board in the top 12. Let's start, though, with the Falcons, Marc Sessler, a team that is, in a very important year for the organization, year 3 under Arthur Smith. They add a dynamic running back. However, there's a year guy in the mix that's probably like, bruh, what else did I need to show you as a rookie? And now you brought in this kid.
Tyler Algier cannot be thrilled.
Tyler Algier is officially your guy.
I like the phone in the background.
I'm not backing off him as my guy because I think that Arthur Smith, this is something another team wouldn't have done because you had value at the position already. I think Bijan Robinson is just an absolutely beautiful fit for the Falcons. They punished people on the ground a year ago. This is a very much Arthur Smith saying we're not going to veer away from that approach. You're in a way because I think there's still the concept that if the Titans ever took Will Levis in this later on in this draft, probably won't happen, but that someone like Tannehill would become available and go to the Falcons. You've essentially built Titans 2.0. And I think Arthur Smith's like, I'm going to continue to do what worked in Tennessee. And you know what? Because I know a lot of people are like, what's the deal with Desmond Ridder? Where's all this trust in him? But this takes so much heat off a quarterback if you can dominate on the ground the way they did towards the end of last season.
Like, the argument against it is they already had a great running game, so how much better can you get? You have Cordarrelle Patterson there, by the way, too. Like, he's still around. You have a good run
What if he's
blocking
LaDainian Tomlinson?
offensive line. That's what I was about to say. He is LaDainian Tomlinson to me as a prospect. Like, that's who he reminds me of. I've seen the edge comparison, too, but to me, Bijan Robinson is just so smooth. Like, part of the value of him is I don't think you ever have to take him off the field. He's just a hoss, and he's so good on third downs. His hands are so good. He can run routes. He can make you miss. He's a power back. And when I'm talking about, like, Paris Johnson, who got taken 6th overall, the tackle, who I think most people probably wouldn't have had him in as a top 15, 20 most talented player, but he plays a position that pushes you up. Like, if Bijan Robinson is a 4-time Pro Bowler, not even LaDainian Tomlinson, but a 4-time Pro Bowler, that's a good pick. I don't care that he plays running back, and I just feel more confident in him than almost any player in this draft, and it makes me more excited to watch the Falcons. So that alone makes it a good pick.
Greg and I have been pushing this Falcons thing for a couple years, Dan. We might finally get our way here.
They have a nice little roster here. The quarterback and the receivers.
You guys were wrong for 2 years, and now maybe
not
this
really.
makes more sense.
They've been getting a little better.
All right.
I believe in Arthur Smith.
I think Bijan Robinson has to be the best running back in football or be in that conversation after this season for this to be the right move, in my opinion. Although,
but like, who else? Who else do you?
I'm saying
take?
You could have listen. This team's not a finished product. I think you could have looked in other positional groups that had a bigger need. Because I'm just saying, if Algier and Patterson are already there, could they use another pass rusher? Could they use somebody in their secondary? Could they use a weapon,
a wide receiver,
another weapon on
yeah,
offense?
I think they felt it was too rich for Smith and Jigba.
Maybe he is LaDainian Tomlinson. I'm not saying you can't come back to me in October and be like, hey, you said Bijan Robinson wasn't going to be good. He could be, But it's, to me, he almost has to be that special for this to make sense. If he's just like a 4-time Pro Bowler and they move on after half a decade, that's the thing that surprised me.
Well, what if he's Derrick Henry or the equivalent of production?
That's like a Hall of Famer to me. You have to be
yeah,
like a Hall
I think
of
that's
Famer.
what they're seeing him as.
I could see that. I also think he can and should be the number 1 overall pick in fantasy drafts, like as a rookie. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but to me,
do you not worry about the timeshare there? Like as
no.
So.
Well, I know they did that last year, but still, no.
Do you move on from?
Touches.
Do you like ship Tyler Algier or
no? He's
Cordero
a great
Patterson
backup.
somewhere else?
He was a 5th-round pick last year. He was a great backup. You give him 75 to 100 touches, like backups of yore. Sorry.
But I thought it was really interesting now to tie it back to Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back out of Alabama who went to the Lions. How you had 2 running backs go in the top 12, and in both situations, they're going to teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, which kind of flies in the face of the Jeremiah theory that I like. Like, if you're going to draft a running back, be a loaded team, a playoff team looking to finish off your offense. And B, both teams had pretty good running back rooms. So I don't hate either fit. I was just surprised that these were the teams that grabbed these 2 very exciting young prospects.
Well, the Lions went out and got David Montgomery, too. I mean, I feel like that is a backfield where we could see someone on the way out at some point.
DeAndre Swift seems to be maybe a little bit out of favor.
That one was kind of shocking to me. Now, I think the Lions did a good job. They traded their 1st and a 3rd with the Cardinals for the Cardinals' 1st and 2nd. So the Lions have the 4th pick on Friday night. They have the 34th overall pick, and they got that by moving down 6 spots from 6 to 12. Gibbs is a really exciting-looking player, great receiver. He compares himself to Jamal Charles. Stylistically, you could maybe see that, but he seems dynamic as a receiver. But it makes no sense to me that they gave David Montgomery all that money. Like, why are you spending that? If you're gonna,
maybe there is another shoe that drops here.
Well, yeah, right. Swift has got to be gone right now. DeAndre Swift is your 3rd running back. It doesn't make sense.
Jalen Carter, I guess it's a fall. He goes at 9 to the Eagles, who had 70 sacks last year, but were very busy bulking up their front 7 still. The Bears followed by taking Darnell Wright, a tackle out of Tennessee. And then Gravediggers, Tennessee Titans, take Peter Skoronski, the lineman out of Northwestern. Could be a guard, could be a tackle. Let's start there with that trio. Gravedigger, I know you were happy with this pick. Skoronski was on many mock drafts like the guy that was coming off the board first at the tackle spot or the line spot, and yet that's not the case, and you end up getting him.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about this. I wanted the Titans to take a quarterback. They all kind of went. I wanted them to get C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson, and that was obviously not in the cards. So Skoronski, I mean, he was the best offensive lineman in college football last year, and his only real concern is that he may not have long enough arms to play tackle. But if he comes in, the Titans don't have really a starting left guard on the roster right now. Andre Dillard is slotted in as your starting left tackle. If, you put Skoronski at left guard because you're looking for a long-term, fix at left tackle, great. If you put Skoronski at left tackle and Andre Dillard has played guard in his career, they're going to figure it out. And I think
Dillard also gets hurt, usually after a couple
that too.
Weeks.
So, I mean, to me, it's we're not exactly sure where all the pieces are going to fit on the line, but we have good pieces, especially I think Skoronski could be one of the best guards.
Well, versatility is he's been compared to Elijah Vera Tucker. If you got a guy, we need a guard, lock him in there.
And I saw Zach Martin comparisons too. If he can be the best guard in the NFL,
got hurt, kick him out to tackle, and he'll do a great job there. So I think that's a good.
It seems like
what about his short arms though? He's got short arms.
Well,
that was what moved Zach Martin inside. I mean, he was a tackle at first, and then he became a Hall of Fame guard.
Short arms.
I'd rather have a Hall of Fame guard than
guard.
like a so-so tackle. Yeah. That said, you told us, Gravedigger, you did a 7-round mock. Titans. That's a lot.
Seems like a lot.
A lot of rounds.
Well, we did one of those, the draft simulators.
Who's we?
Pick for the Titans. My co-host and I on our podcast, the Music City
How long
Audible.
did that
there it
take?
is. Get that plug in there, bro.
How long did that take?
It was about an hour-long pod.
Okay, but you had Skoronski.
Yeah.
Going to the Titans on that pod.
Yeah.
And if you had just picked, who'd you pick for the Titans on our pod?
Stroud. I had them trading up for Stroud. I was buying into all the
Marc
smoke.
incredulous.
What? No, I thought you literally went
Our
over
podcast?
7 rounds of picks on a
just
pod.
the Titans picks.
Just the Titans.
Oh, all right. I thought you did. It's like a white noise machine in the middle of the night.
So if you had just picked Skoronski on this pod, Gravedigger,
Should have.
you would have won the
You would've won.
competition.
So
now I have a
close.
question about that.
So close.
Not that it matters anymore because I'm already losing. I'm already losing.
Filing an appeal?
Here we go.
No.
No, you can't return your Harold Landry III jersey. They're not taking returns on that. That's the answer to your question.
If Marc has 13 points right now, right?
Yeah.
What if
Not
the
right
Titans,
now, permanently.
What if the Titans pick Will Levis at 41 tomorrow?
We're not engaging in
Oh.
Then you get 15 points and beat me
interesting.
by 3? I don't know.
We got
because I picked.
You picked him.
Well, then maybe it would be applicable. I don't know. Check that out later.
That was a La Raviole Magnifico right
no,
there.
I would say the scoring is locked down at this point, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's no
it's
something
fine.
happens in the third round.
No,
I
it's
do want to
just a
see what would
first round
happen.
mock. It's
Right. What would happen though if they did that? Then I think that our Tannehill to Atlanta plan becomes much more tangible.
Now, Gravedigger, we'll get to sandwiches on Saturday to recap
Tannehill-gible.
them all, but you said there wouldn't be any top 10 trades.
Top 7, but yes, I still was
it
wrong.
top 7? And there was a couple here. The Detroit trade, there was the Arizona trade, so
Yeah.
you got hit pretty heavy.
Listen, take
It went
easy
pretty
now.
quiet from there though. It wasn't overly trade heavy.
You cool with the short arms?
I'm cool with it. If Rashawn Slater has
Got short
fairly short
arms.
arms too, right? Like, and he was
could
amazing.
come in here and absolutely clean house.
Well, let's
got
talk
the
about
tiny
the other top 10 trade though, which was the Eagles trading up one spot.
Oh, yeah.
Gave up very little. What a night for Howie.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
They're the winners.
I think we could talk about their 2 picks together because they're
Do it,
kind of they're a combo platter. To get Jalen Carter, the number 1 player on Daniel Jeremiah's board before the off-field stuff really popped up, the guy who pops off the screen more than any player in this entire draft, where you just look at him and you're like, oh my God, that guy is just going to destroy in the NFL. He's one of the best defensive tackle prospects in years. To get him at 9, and all you gave up to move up was what? A 4th-round pick to move up that 1 spot. And then you get Nolan Smith late in the draft, who to me was like a top 15 type of player who looks a lot like Hassan Reddick. You put those 2 guys on what's already a pretty good defensive line, and it's just the rich get richer, and they know who they are. I really love the way the Eagles build their team.
Half their defense is from Georgia. You're playing in a pretty weakened NFC right now, where the landscape feels very manageable.
Who are the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC right now?
Well, you'd be giggling by the
Hurts.
time you got to number 5. I think.
Hurts, Dak.
Good luck from there.
Yeah. Then it gets
Gets weird
for
quick.
me. It gets weird. You
You need Fields to take a jump.
Cousins is in there. Maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an insult.
Zoinks. We're missing someone that are
Stafford.
going to get people really mad, but well, just
That's a
imagine we didn't forget
That's a
it.
different exercise for
Matthew
a different day. But
Stafford. Who did we forget? Anybody in the NFC?
Brock Purdy, Geno Smith,
Geno. Geno might be 5. He might be in the top 5.
Daniel Jones.
I guess from a talent perspective, Kyler Murray, but he's not even present.
No, that's
No,
fair.
no,
That's
no.
fair.
Just saying talent
no.
from a talent angle.
Kyler Murray.
Jared Goff.
I mean, it really
It's depressing landscape.
like that pick of the Eagles was what the Saints pick last year, and it just goes to show when you're always thinking about the future, and I think the Eagles think about the future better than just about anyone. They do everything like a year in advance. Like that trade at the time was like, oh yeah, that was a good trade. They picked up an extra first. Saints moved up for Olave, but the Saints are happy. Now you look at it a year later, because you weren't getting too antsy. You waited a year. You get maybe the best player in the draft for just waiting a year.
Here, I think we talked. He pled no contest to misdemeanor charges of
Yes.
reckless driving and racing. And then this, according to ESPN, he was 9 pounds heavier at his pro day than he was at the NFL Combine 2 weeks earlier. He couldn't finish his positional drills. So, listen, you could see that stuff, and it affected him most likely, and maybe. And this is where you kind of trust the organization. This is why I'm not saying waving a red flag myself. I'm saying, okay, if Philly felt like he checked out and they could get him on the straight and narrow, I buy it. Especially joining a veteran roster here. You got veteran like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, guys like that. This is a perfect spot for Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, Seattle was the one a lot of people pointed to, and that would have made sense too. But Philly's a great landing
Yeah,
spot.
you have a new defensive coordinator in Sean Desai. Like, although there was a lot of stuff they'll do similar from last year on defense, and I mean they're just ultra loaded.
The Bears, that was a very a smart decision. They have to better protect Justin Fields. So Darnell Wright there, a clean prospect, a tackle there. Any thoughts beyond that?
Right tackle. They're happy with their left tackle, Braxton Jones. I think they hit on a 5th rounder a year ago who really looked quite good at left tackle. And so they took a guy in right who, the way explained to me, the more you watched him, it was like, why isn't this guy getting ranked higher on draft boards? And then eventually he did. He looks like the most ready kind of guy to go play day one. He's just a right tackle only, but for the Bears, I don't think that's going to bother
It's a similar situation to Seattle where when they hit on a late round cornerback last year, and now they come back and they get a big prospect. And if they hit on this guy now, look out. And you did it without giving up 2 lottery type picks.
I keep clicking by mistake, and I just exit out on Peter Schrager's mock draft and thinking those were the picks that actually happened, and it's blowing my brain. It's like, what? What is that?
What? Hit it. Let's go. Let's fly. Give me a long one. Give me a long Greggy what.
What?
I'm getting hot again.
What? What?
All right, okay.
You're going to lose me
So
soon.
this part of the draft frustrates me a little bit. So the Packers, as a part of the Aaron Rodgers trade, swapped number 1 picks this year. So they move into 13, and they say, we want to get some help with our defense. They do it all. By the way, this is what they do all the time, the Packers. They take defensive players.
Sure, they didn't stick it to Aaron Rodgers.
In
I
the
was
first
kind of hoping
round,
they would.
And Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa goes there.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, I had a sandwich prop saying that they would take at least 4 wide receiver, tight end combinations.
Still could happen.
It still can happen.
Because it was nebulous, the prop.
Yeah, but this is like...
They've got 11 more picks.
This is where I thought it would happen, though, is like you go get the best wide receiver and you build around Jordan Love, and I guess it is frustrating from that angle, except that Lucas Van Ness, to me, along with Rashawn Gary, I just think he just strikes me as someone that's going to come right in and be ultra disruptive. And I've liked him a lot through this whole process. He's sort of an athletic freak, and it's good for Green Bay. I think from that angle, it's not like it's negative because he's not a wide receiver.
Well, he also is wearing the shirt, I think, of any draft prospect that would have been most likely to be worn by Marc Sessler. Like it was a pretty wild, beautiful shirt that was really a change to what we mostly see in men's fashion. Marc is trying to be the change that he wants to see in men's fashion. He's been very frustrated for years.
I at least complain about it. I don't know what change.
Well, this shirt, look at this. I mean, people should check out the YouTube of this podcast.
What do they call it? Paisley? Is that what that is?
I don't know what this is.
Nice.
Sort of
Something Prince would wear in his estate.
like earthly flower
Minneapolis,
arrangements or something.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
Very
Van
nice.
Ness will be good, but color me less excited that we got like Preston Smith's replacement. I don't know. I just wanted something more poppy. But he fits very much with Gary and Preston Smith. He reminds me of Preston Smith, kind of, as a guy who's going to get a lot of pressures, probably not a lot of sacks. Good step.
These guys from like Iowa, they don't care if it's like 1 degree out.
That's
Just
not
go
the
do
pick that annoyed me. The next pick is what annoyed me because the Pittsburgh Steelers trade up with the New England Patriots. And, we talked about this leading into the draft. It's time for Pittsburgh to shore up that offensive line and get back to, dominating up front. We had Damashek on the live stream. Check that out. And he made a point of that as well. They go and get Broderick Jones, which not only costs me a sandwich, it, I think, causes the next team, the Jets, to have to pivot and go in a different direction. So that was an area of need for Pittsburgh. They have a second-year quarterback in Kenny Pickett, a running game that I feel like, they have a first-round running back from a couple of years ago.
Najee Harris?
Yeah, Najee Harris, that you feel like it hasn't ever really totally clicked, and I think a lot of that goes back to QB line play. Maybe now everything's in line for Harris to truly take off and Pickett to take the next step with a big-time lineman if Broderick Jones hits.
I think you started to see that run game come together at the end of last season. The line got a little bit better after being an abject disaster early on. Damashek, who is pretty accurate with his Steelers prognostications, called them an 11-win team in a rough and tumble AFC. The line, I think, for growing up, the Steelers always mauled you with the offensive line, and it's been a real problem lately. And their offense now at this point feels so different from where they were a year and a half ago, because you got all these young, talented players on sort of their first contract, and quarterback, George Pickens, you're improving the line. Najee Harris, it's like you can really see something there.
There was kind of a run on tackles here. So it's telling to me the Patriots traded out. I thought they might take a tackle, but they traded out. They picked up, an extra, I think it was a fourth, to move down a few spots. And maybe they were just happy to extra stick it to the Jets. They somehow knew that the Steelers would take the Jets guy, although we don't really even know it was the Jets guy. It just seemed to make sense.
I think it was the Jets guy, because the Jets, they take Will McDonald out of Iowa State, who is known as Bendy or Mr. Bendy, and is, despite not having ideal size, is a very athletic, talented edge rusher. Jets are still looking for that consistency in their pass rush, and yet, I think they were kind of caught a little bit here, because remember, they have Carl Lawson. It's kind of a forgotten thing, but they had all those first-round picks last year. They took Jermaine Johnson last year as well. They have a ton of linemen, and I know Saleh is going to try to keep all those guys in the mix, but I don't know. I was definitely it's all kind of, there's still a lot of afterglow with the Rodgers thing, so I'm not really that down about it. But the offensive linemen felt like such the move, and they ran out of the big four.
Yeah, I thought you made a good point on our live stream where like they are basically going into, now there's more picks to come, but you're going into the season with last year's line that's fine if they can stay healthy. And if Mekhi Becton, has had a good offseason. There's a lot of praise around his effort and everything, but like you got to
hasn't played in 2 years.
You got to stay intact, right?
Yeah.
And so this would have been it felt like a really ripe place for an offensive tackle.
I would assume they'll take one in this draft, but it might be like a fourth rounder that you're just crossing your fingers that you can develop. Will McDonald is a little bit different flavor than the guys they have. I mean, he's a different flavor than most of the league, but we're seeing the league get lighter. I mean, he's like Nolan Smith in terms of his size. Under 240 pounds as an edge rusher is wild. But just a total like Tasmanian devil of just getting after the quarterback and just tough as hell, and didn't like blow up the combine quite as much. So I think a lot of people thought Nolan Smith would go ahead of him, and Nolan Smith ended up going 15 picks later. But an exciting player, a little different flavor than the other guys.
It's just not what I was expecting. I even thought there was a chance they might go get one of the wide receivers or a tight end, but they take another pass rusher, and he's going to eventually replace Carl Lawson. It just becomes a matter of, is that happening next year? Or is Lawson potentially, is that something that can happen? Will he be moved or even released? We shall see. Let's take a break.
You'll always have your chant.
Yeah.
Well, see, you can't hurt me. You can't hurt me right now. It's Teflon, baby. Let's take a break, and we'll hit the back end of the first round. All right, here we go. Welcome back to the podcast. The Commanders, meat and potatoes, Marc. Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback out of Mississippi State. The New England Patriots traded back to take a cornerback as well, Christian Gonzalez, who had dropped a little bit there, and then we'll move to the Detroit Lions, and we'll hit all these three. Jack Campbell, a little bit of a surprise, inside linebacker out of Iowa, so they go running back and inside linebacker with their 2 first-round picks.
You got to be thrilled if you're the Patriots to have Christian Gonzalez, who, I don't know, that seemed like a top 10 pick or the first cornerback off the board potentially, to fall to you at 17. It's a place where I really would want to be a cornerback and go play because I trust the development there under Bill Belichick.
It is exciting for them to have, and so rare to have a draft that worked out so well for them conventionally. I mean, it doesn't matter what the mock draft grades are, but they'll get a good one for once because Gonzalez fits a need. They certainly could use a cornerback. They could certainly use a cornerback that's like taller than me. I mean, their cornerbacks is just a small group. Jonathan Jones, you got Jack Jones, you got Marcus Jones. All the Joneses, they're not terribly tall. Neither is Miles Bryant. It's just like one of the smallest groups of cornerbacks in the NFL, maybe in NFL history. Well, I guess they used to be small back in the day.
Can you check every cornerback group in the history of the league and see?
But now you bring in a guy who's like smooth as hell.
Please.
I mean, just the way he moves is nice. Like a little Stephon Gilmore vibe.
Emmanuel Sanders said on NFL Network before the draft that Christian Gonzalez was exactly the type of corner, as a smaller wide receiver, exactly the kind of cornerback you don't want to deal with.
So the Patriots
Very
are
fluid.
excited, and
Forbes is fun too. Under 170 pounds is a 6'1" guy, but like just
Sorry,
a
I was
ridiculous
in the middle of
ball
talking, but
Sorry.
it's okay, Greg. I was just going to say Christian Gonzalez was not overly excited, it seemed, after he was
I
selected.
think he was
I'm a
disappointed to
jerk.
fall to 17.
Yeah.
How much money? How much money does it cost you to fall from 17? Like, if he went top 10, is there that? I know it's a big difference, but how big are we talking?
Plus, it's
I
like
don't
this-
have the exact number for you at this moment, but I can do some work on that.
Justin, once you get through every cornerbacks group in the history of the league, just the exact money.
All right,
Okay,
I got
not gonna do
an
that.
article. Number 7, let's say where a lot of people mocked
Yeah.
him to the Raiders,
Yeah.
27 million. Number 17,
Guaranteed.
well, this is the whole contract, which
Got
they
it.
almost always all get. 16 million. So that's a $7 million difference.
Jesus Christ.
Pretty big difference.
Maybe I wouldn't be smiling as much either, but he's still first-round pick in the NFL. Are we surprised about the Lions pick, Greg? After they take the running back, going Jack Campbell there, not a lot of people had them there, but they do need to boost that defense.
Yeah, that was shocking. Jack Campbell, though, is a guy I think they kind of are living in an age that Dan Campbell played in. You know, they draft a running back, they draft an off-ball linebacker. Like Jack Campbell is the type of guy who 20 years ago would have got taken in the top 20 and you wouldn't have blinked. He won the college award for the best linebacker. He's extremely athletic. He blew up the combine just like, you know, a nice corn-fed boy from Iowa that just made play after play, like racked up tackles. But he was not getting a lot of buzz in this draft because that position's just not valued, and he wasn't like a total freak like a Devin White who was getting top 10.
2022 Butkus Award
There you
winner.
Corn-fed.
Corn-fed.
I don't know why you always say that about. I always say that, or people say that
Just-
about. Like
I usually
Iowa.
know what that
Iowa
means,
always, yeah.
typically.
Just
Well,
means
I think they're out there working the fields. They're farmers.
means you played in
Sons
the
of farmers and they're
Big
farmers
Ten.
themselves.
You're like a white guy.
Yeah.
That's
It's like
essentially
the-
what it is.
It's the crafty wide receiver, but for like a linebacker, yeah, corn-fed.
Yeah. It doesn't suggest a slight individual.
It's always like I always see them in mock drafts to be like, this guy just like looks like he just seems like a patriot, and it's just always a white guy.
Let's keep on moving.
I like this next pick.
All right, the next pick. Go ahead. Set it up, pal.
Elijah Cansey, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Todd Bowles gets, baby Aaron Donald. I want to see him play because, I mean, there's like
Baby Aaron Donald, what a
some of the comp. Yeah, but it's
What
like
a comp.
his arms are also a little short. That's maybe an issue, but like he's explosive and they could use a little juice right there.
Yeah, just like a pure pass rusher. I always get a little worried about Todd Bowles. Just seems like all he cares about is defense, and so Cansey is a fun pick, and he's not going to be playing on running downs necessarily all the time right away, and that's fine. But he'll juice up the passers. But you do need to play offense.
This
Todd Bowles.
is when I got a little or increasingly worried for Will Levis because this seemed like a potential landing spot for him.
I know, and the draft board plays out a certain way or whatever, but they're serious about this Baker thing. I guess Tampa.
Yeah, I think they are at least for this year. I mean, but
Is
there's
that a surprise? It's a little surprising.
I don't know.
He's been flailing for years.
They
He had
also
a
have-
couple of good games last
they
year,
have
but
Kyle
he's going to be
Trask.
there like week one.
they
starter?
keep talking about Kyle Trask
Yeah, I
whenever they
guess.
talk about Baker Mayfield. But what's so exciting about Kyle Trask?
They
that
could
we've
be a
seen-
Tannehill guy. I also think they're among the most likely Will Levis landing spots in round 2. I thought they would take Levis there. That was the first spot where I was like,
I'm with you.
Let's head into the 20s. All right, this is a great pick. The Seattle Seahawks, after passing on a quarterback and instead addressing their defense in the top 5, they then take Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State, seen by many as the best wide receiver in this class. So they have Tyler Lockett, they have DK Metcalf, and now they have Smith and Jigba. A very nice trio. One of the best. Who was that?
Damn.
If he hits,
wait, that's Kevin Hart talking to who was it?
When he found out somebody was old, it's an actor.
Don Cheadle.
Don Cheadle.
oh, and Cheadle got pissed.
Every time I
Check
hear
out that
Kevin
video.
Hart talk, I just think of him saying,
Damn.
Anyway, Smith and Jigba hits. That's a really nice trio. And again, everything broke Geno today. They don't get Richardson. They address defense in the first pick, and then they add another playmaker. Very nice, very nice.
I think he's going to be really productive for them out of the gate. Great route runner, fits right in. And, I thought he could have gone to the Jets. I thought he could have gone to the Packers. It's a bit of a coup d'etat for Seattle to get him here.
He's like the option route master, and where just him and the quarterback have to be on the same page. He looks at the leverage, and he picks which spot to go. Basically, a better version of all those slot receivers, and the Seahawks have been desperately needing that for years. Like, he's just good at setting up defenders in the open field. Like, he's kind of got like a crossover in terms of how he gets past people, vision. Like, he's just a great runner, and man, the three of them complement each other very well, those three receivers.
Yeah, great pick. And you know what? We were in the heat of the moment doing the live stream. I did not even process that this started a run of 4 straight wide receivers off the board. So, as we said, Smith and Jigba to Seattle. The Chargers take Quentin Johnston, adding another playmaker. That was a smart move out of TCU. The Ravens then, and by the way, we're going to get to Lamar in a second, but let's start by talking about the draft still. Zay Flowers, the wide receiver out of BC, who had been connected to Kansas City as a potential option. He goes to Baltimore, and then with the 23rd pick, another wide receiver, Jordan Addison out of USC, goes to the Vikings. Obviously replacing Adam Thielen, or that's the hope. Wow, 4 in a row.
I'd start with the Ravens because it's a big win for, I think, Rashad Bateman, too, who, he's been injured. He's had durability issues, but I think he's a very good wide receiver. You now have Odell Beckham, Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Marc Andrews, a new offensive coordinator, and you have Lamar Jackson.
Is it good news for Rashad Bateman?
I mean, I guess I should say that more, that I don't want him to be your number one wide receiver. And now you've kind of put him probably where he's tiered. It's not great for his production, but for the Ravens, who have struggled for decades to draft anyone, like, I thought Zay Flowers was almost a home run to be chased after by the Chiefs, who seemed so interested in him and would have fit so well there. But this passing game has hope for the first time in a while.
Well, Steve Smith, watched Flowers and thought, he kind of reminds me of me. And now you put him in Baltimore, and you can't help but think of Steve Smith's years there, and Anquan Bolden. They've always had I know it's totally different staffs. It's not necessarily connected, but I can see Lamar throwing well over the middle of the field. That's where he's at his best. To Zay Flowers. And now you have all sorts of different flavors between Rashad Bateman and Odell. It's just a much different team. And, oh, by the way, you can have a fully healthy J.K. Dobbins, not like just coming back from injury halfway through the season. You've got Linderbaum's now a year older, their first-round pick. I mean, they still need to stay healthy, but on paper, it's a great day for Lamar Jackson, and we might as well get to it. I mean, It's crazy that this is an afterthought. Lamar Jackson's new contract is an afterthought, but that's what happens on draft day.
It's the first night of the NFL draft, and Lamar signs comes to agreement on a 5-year, $260 million contract. Rap Sheet had the reporting there. The deal includes $185 million in total guarantees per Rappaport. The $52 million per year annual salary makes Jackson the NFL's newest highest paid player. So Jalen Hurts had that title for all of a week. So there are different ways to look at this. Of course, it's Deshaun Watson who still has the strap for the most guaranteed money at $230. That was what obviously Lamar was shooting for, but he ends up in a very good place. He gets a 5-year deal, $185 million guarantee, and he's not going anywhere. Do we have some Lamar sound making the announcement on social media as the kids in sports do these days?
Yes, courtesy of the Baltimore Ravens.
All right.
For the last few months, there's been a lot of he say, she say, a lot of nail biting, a lot of head scratching going on. But for the next 5 years, it's a lot of flock going on. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
A lot of flock.
Can't wait to get there. Can't wait to be there. Can't wait to light up M&T for the next 5 years, man. Let's get it.
M&T, the stadium.
Right. A lot of he said, she said scenarios there.
I mean, there is going to be a lot of flocking going on. We're going to be flocking up a storm in Baltimore. Let's go.
Who's we?
I don't know. Just watching football. people that are happy this is over. You were right, by the way, to ask if the Hurts contract had an impact. I was like, I don't know. No, I didn't think so.
I'm loyal to football.
And he ends up signing essentially Jalen Hurts' contract plus 10%. That's why you don't need an agent apparently in the end. Is you just like, oh yeah, give me Jalen Hurts, but add like 7%
I mean,
to all his numbers.
I really don't have a super strong feeling about having an agent or not, but it made it a lot more tedious for all of us.
Yeah, that's kind of the most important thing.
Yeah,
at least for
but
us.
It's over.
It's over,
and it's in a nice spot. I'm just.
Do we
happy.
know? Do we? Yeah. Is there anything about the contract we don't know? I have no idea. But all we know is it's no longer a story. He is going there, and I said it about when Odell signed. The writing was on the wall there because Odell is a certain type of guy, and he was not going to go play with Snoop Huntley. Lamar was going back. It felt like it was going to happen. The only thing then was like, do the Ravens? How far did they want to take this? Did they want to do something like they did today by adding a playmaker and then have Lamar play on that franchise and see how he does with a better supporting cast before they – I kind of maybe would have thought about doing that. But at the same time, things had gotten so –
I don't know if he would have done that.
Because the negotiation was so grim that I don't think they even had that as an option. They almost had to make Lamar – happy and keep it from being a circus, which is kind of what it was.
I think what was lost a little in this is how much the Ravens wanted Lamar Jackson to keep being their quarterback this whole time. Now, they had a certain way they approached the negotiation, but they did not want to be in any world where they were starting over at quarterback when they have this quarterback that they really love. That's why they offered him $133 million guaranteed 6 months ago. The problem was that price just wasn't enough. They get to the finish line. I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad, this is a good-looking team overall. That's why that 11 wins for the Steelers seems rich to me because I think the Browns have a chance. They have a pretty good roster if Watson plays well. And then you have the Ravens and you have the Bengals. Man, it's just a loaded division.
When Damashek said that was before they had taken Zay Flowers here too. Not that that's the complete turning point. I mean, I think if we knew all this was going to happen, that Lamar Jackson was essentially going to go to market months ago, and someone said not a single other team would show any tangible interest in him, that's an upset. The Ravens really want him, but no one else did.
Well, they didn't want to give up, multiple first-round picks and that.
I think there were probably aspects of it that were humbling for Jackson, but at the end of the day, things kind of worked out.
And it's sort of gotten lost in the shuffle. Todd Monk and the new offensive coordinator. It's going to be a totally different offense. We'll see what it looks like. He was in college. He had been in the pros before, but it's not going to be that weird, just crazy run-heavy Gregg Roman thing.
Well, I think the Gregg Roman thing, as it does, kind of ran its course, and probably the moving on from Gregg Roman was a big boon for Lamar Jackson too. I think.
I just wonder if they had a potential opportunity to see if Lamar could stay healthy this upcoming season.
I just don't think
his
he would have.
Production was going to kind of get back to what he was a few years ago.
You think he would have played? I could have seen him.
I don't think it would have. I think it was.
I could see him stay out the year.
It was kind of the well was poisoned from that perspective. So they're rolling the dice a little bit, but that's how it works.
If Kyler's getting that money, if Deshaun Watson's getting that money, this is an MVP. He's getting that money.
Here we go. The Giants, who, by the way, gave a lot of money to a quarterback that maybe you need to see more from. They take a cornerback, Deontay Banks, out of Maryland. That is an area of need. The Bills, speaking of area of need, at 25, take Dalton Kincaid. So the first tight end comes off the board out of Utah, giving the team another offensive playmaker. Everyone was saying the same thing there. They need to add players. Now is DeAndre Hopkins next? Maybe not. There are reports that came out today that the Cardinals now are more likely to hang on to Hopkins, but maybe that's smoke. Still would like to see that. Get Kincaid and Hopkins in there, and we're flying. And then the Dallas Cowboys at 26 overall take the Wizard of Maz, Mozzie Smith, defensive tackle out of Michigan. So they want to help out with their run-stuffing game, and Smith he's good at that.
I love Kincaid for the Bills. I think that this would have been a wide receiver area too had there not been that run. The one thing about the Hopkins, just going to look at over the cap, I think I mentioned this the other show, that the amount of dead money that the Cardinals are still stuck with if they move him. I know they're in rebuilding mode.
Yeah, they're dead anyway.
They're
though,
dead
you know?
anyway,
so
so
it's
you
like,
get something
They've
for
been
him. But
trying to, by all accounts. Rap
Yeah.
Sheet said they were trying to include him in a deal that would have included the Titans potentially.
You
Or
see
no,
the
just-
reporting on
actually
this
that was
Cardinals
tricky
that was
thing.
Pro
trade, though.
Football Talk rather that reported that. I should say.
well, then why not Buffalo go get him? I mean, like that makes.
right.
I'm a
I
little
don't think he's
concerned
gonna
about the
cost much.
Stephon Diggs thing too. Like he's not doing the off season. Like it seems to be some
Here's
discord
what,
there.
for what it's worth. Cardinals general manager Monty Ossenfort had this to say after Thursday night. I don't foresee that happening, Ossenfort said after Paris Johnson Jr. was taken at number 6. I don't know what is going to happen here in the next couple days. Right now, I don't foresee that happening now. So that's not definitely. Oh, he also added DeAndre's a Cardinal, and we're moving forward.
Oh, well,
so that's pretty strong. I would have led with that quote, but it's okay.
I do love that Kincaid pick. They actually gave up a 4th-round pick to move up 2 spots because I think they were worried Dallas would potentially take Dalton Kincaid. Who knows if Dallas actually would have, because I was sure they were going to take Michael Mayer there, the Notre Dame tight end.
Surprising he fell out of the first round.
Felt like the Jason Witten replacement if there ever was one. But, man, I really love Kincaid. I was totally with Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah. He had Kincaid as a top 10 player in this entire draft. I thought he was the most exciting pass catcher in this draft, period. Just the crazy hands.
Well, here's the test, Greggy.
Yeah.
This is the test, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it's time for a tight end to come into this league and ball out.
You demanded it.
I demanded it. If not, stop taking him in the first round.
I mean, he's the 25th pick, though.
But I'm saying first rounder, and you're putting him in Western New York with one of the great quarterbacks in the sport, and a great. They got Stephon Diggs in the building. You have no excuse for this guy not to be a baller.
It's
Let's
not
go.
too much for you to ask that.
You also,
come on.
You also just gave Dawson Knox a ton of money. But I think they're very different players. Knox, a little bit of a blocker, but still, it's interesting. Give that much money to Dawson Knox, then take Kincaid. I do want to mention.
Can I just say the great Eric Roberts behind the glass, one of the people behind the scenes that make the show go, and a diehard Bills fan, pointed out the exact contract specifics. What was it, $13 million a year in that extension?
Yep.
But $52 million.
4-year, 52, I think.
Like that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And now you just brought in another tight end. Maybe they make it work, and then Knox does different things than Kincaid,
that was
but it's a lot of money.
It was an overpay for Knox.
A lot of
Knox
money.
is fine, but that was
And
that was surprising.
if there's any reason to check out our YouTube live stream, go to the last 10 minutes or so and check out Eric's Bill shirt. It's just fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Just check out Eric in general.
Yeah, no, I mean,
He's
you can
kind
do
of a
that too.
striking-looking guy.
Yes.
He's got dark hair.
A lot of comments
handsome
in the
guy,
stream.
The
a lot of comments.
mustache, and then he's got these cool piercings, nice torso area, and then a really nice fitted shirt.
This is getting.
Is everything okay, Eric?
This doesn't have sex appeal.
Yeah. Wait.
Are we cool, Eric? Okay, he's giving me a thumbs up.
HR has actually just walked in.
HR is at home. HR
Yeah,
is sleeping.
That's
HR
true.
went home 2 days
Ain't
ago.
no rules
We're
after 10
I'm
p.m.
falling asleep as well.
Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
home soon, but so that Chargers and Vikings fans don't complain. Quentin Johnston, nice little Mike Williams replacement. That's interesting, though. I kind of think Mike Williams is not long for the Chargers. One more year on his contract. And then Addison was my personal favorite wide receiver in this class, just because I feel like he is going to get open. That's what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said in his press conference. Just like this guy gets open coming off the bus. He just runs great routes. So good luck to cornerbacks trying to
That is a
guard
mess.
Justin Jefferson
Yeah.
and Addison. Addison's your number 2. You can't double that guy.
Yeah, and famously, it was the Vikings, a different brain trust, obviously, so maybe it's not 1-to-1, and it's not even close, actually. But they laughed when it was who did the Eagles take ahead of Justin Jefferson?
Jalen Reagor.
Jalen Reagor. So they're hoping
Who's now on the Vikings.
history is going to repeat itself, and they end up getting the best wide receiver in this draft class, even if he isn't the first off the board. And you know who else could just, in his heyday, he just always got open?
Randy Moss.
Well, it's different.
Okay.
Adam Thielen.
Oh.
That's what he did.
Well, I'm not.
He's surprised.
I'm not
He's like,
wrong
it's
about.
always open.
I'm correct about Randy Moss. Though.
That's absolutely right. About Thielen.
Thank you, Gregg. Marc, you're muddling the process.
I was
Moss
doing
was
that
fine.
on purpose for you.
He was okay. Remember that game on Thanksgiving, and he had 3 touchdown catches? That was the only 3 catches he had in that whole game against the Cowboys. Just think about that. Like, is Randy Moss truly elite?
Well, it wouldn't have happened if that Cowboys team had Mazzie Smith, defensive tackle out of Michigan. So
The Wizard of Maz. All right, let's finish it up here. The Jags pick they got from Buffalo take Anton Harrison, tackle. Oklahoma, we should mention that Cam Robinson, their left tackle, apparently tested positive for PEDs and is facing a suspension. We don't know how long the suspension is unless something else was reported. But he's out for the beginning of the season, so here's Harrison. Potential 6-game suspension, it appears to be.
Never a great sign when you're, like, taking a guy because your other guy just got suspended. I don't know.
I'm not sure that's why they did that, but it feels a little desperate.
The Bengals take defensive end Miles Murphy out of Clemson, so they add. We connected them to those running backs, but they were long gone. Those running backs by the time the Cincinnati Bengals got on the draft board. So yeah, they focus on defense there. The Saints from San Francisco through Miami and Denver take Brian Bresee of Clemson, the defensive tackle.
Sean Payton pick, yeah.
The Philadelphia Eagles, as we talked about already, Nolan Smith out of Georgia, and the final, it's got to be, because it's the last pick, it's got to be the tough one. The Kansas City Chiefs take Felix Anudike-Uzomah, defensive end out of Kansas State.
Nice pop from the local crowd there. Great job by Kansas City in general. Since we were on air, we weren't really hearing the broadcast as much as I expected. I guess
people
I don't know
seem
why.
to be having fun.
But
it appeared enjoyable.
Just the visuals of it was wild. And then when they announced Uzomah's name, they went crazy. And I just was like, wow, that's a lot of pop for him. But a Kansas State guy makes sense.
Kansas State.
Neighboring.
You know what? Speaking of Eric Roberts, we asked Eric to give some breakdown of that. He said, loyal to the soil, but Kansas State and Kansas City, different states, right?
Yeah, but they're close. In Missouri, yes.
Maybe a little disloyal to the soil.
Well, I mean, I think it's a regional pick.
Right. I mean, people get, Kansas City, Missouri. I mean, there is a Kansas City, Kansas, but that's beside the point, I guess, in this conversation.
I'm just pointing it out.
It's a fair thing to point out, but I understand.
He said loyal to the soil, perhaps disloyal to said soil.
You've just made things awkward with Eric after so many nice compliments just minutes ago.
You know how long right now? It's currently 1:56 in the morning in Kansas City. If you get on I-70, you're getting from Kansas State to downtown Kansas City in 16 minutes.
Well,
that's loyal. The soil's the same.
Got to get over the border, though.
You're very into the state line scenario.
Yeah.
I understand.
There could be a toll road.
Now, you could stop at the Supermart in El Torito. It's about halfway if you want.
I'm sure there's a rival supermarket for
you see
the
this
Kansas
tweet?
State side.
Yeah, exactly. Read that to us.
I wish I could pronounce his name. Felix.
That's why I'm leaving it to you.
Said, quote, I got drafted by literally my favorite team growing up.
It's pretty good.
So your argument continues.
It's just a different state,
your argument continues to crumble, though, from a certain angle.
You are a factory of sadness!
Some things are working against me in this argument.
I would say so.
But the only thing I have on my side is the fact that it's a different state. And you can push back all you want, but that's not changing.
Well, we can discuss that later.
Can we?
He's a top 10 football insider.
The only thing you have on your side is that we just wrapped it all up. Oh, congratulations, Saints. You took another, toolsy defensive end that you're not in love with, at least that your fans aren't in love with. They always take these guys.
So obviously, let's see, who is the best available players and by the way, the Steelers have the first pick of the second round. Steelers, Cardinals, Lions, first three up.
Some of these tight ends.
Does Will Levis go to one of those teams? Hendon Hook? I don't know.
Hendon Hooker. I mean,
how about the Rams picking fifth in the second round? Interesting.
What do you project for them?
They need a
quarterback, maybe?
Oh, you know who didn't go? Joey Porter didn't go.
Yeah, Joey Porter, who I...
Oh, and the Steelers are up first. Maybe that's the spot.
I think you've got to. I hate when teams don't do this
they
thing.
Might not think he's that good at football, though. I know there's a connection to
it's a relative surprise that he fell out of the first round.
A lot of it, a physical guy that most analysts had in their top 20 in terms of.
It's not an obligation though for them to.
They could use a cornerback.
It's
not, but I hate when teams don't do it. Joey Porter was the heart and soul, and quite annoying if you were
do the Clay Matthews.
No, but
thing.
if you it reminds me when the Browns passed on the son of Clay Matthews, and he becomes or it's like, let's pass on J.J. Watt's brother, because there couldn't possibly be another Watt that's just as good as him.
It's a fair point. How did one Watt get so underdrafted after the other Watt got overdrafted? Taco Charlton went ahead of T.J. Watt.
What are we doing here?
Let's use that as a cautionary tale here.
Brian Branch, who the best safety in the draft, like can do a little bit of everything, not like crazy athleticism, but I thought he might go in the first half of the first round. Is still out there. Michael Mayer, as we mentioned, those are kind of the biggest.
Mayer,
your guy Darnell Washington, a lot of receivers.
I can't wait to see.
A lot of good
him.
second round receivers. I'm a big fan of a few of them. Mingo is a good one. I think Cedric Tillman's a good one.
T.J. Watt went 30th overall in 2017. To
Absurd.
The Steelers. He's going to the Hall of Fame.
Utterly absurd.
Good chance. So, listen, you might have picked first, second, third, but you can get a Hall of Famer in the back end of the round. You can get a Hall of Famer in the second round. You can get a Hall of Famer at 199. Greg, remember that Tom Brady?
Can't wait to check out the Tom Brady pick. Day 3, always my favorite.
All right, that is it. So, check out the stream. That's fun. Check out, well, you already checked this podcast out if you're listening, but also check out our Saturday recap of the whole draft, including some winners and losers. And then
won't be doing that one at 10:30 at night.
Thank you to everybody behind the scenes for making this ship go. Thank you to the listeners, the viewers. Heed the call.